Any other questions?
Yes, we have a couple other questions that have come in. So one, again, recognizing this is a changed process from how it has been in the past, how will these participant reflections and responses be informing the grant awards? How will they relate to grant awards?
Thank you. So thank you for that question. So I know this question has come up a lot, and in part of this redesign is that we felt as though, right, we are also doing community work, Julian and I, as you know, through Maine initiatives, but also outside of Maine initiatives. And so we also have gone through grant writing processes, and it's always feels extractive and hard and difficult to know that there's people out in the community who may be reading our work to dissect and evaluate, and then it applies to an award or doesn't or whatever. And so we just didn't want that to be part of the process this year. We wanted it to be to be different, to be decentering and redirecting that centering to community leaders, lifting up community leaders. And so the reflection and response form answers are going to help inform how to continue to evolve and design the process to be more engaging, to be more educational, to be more equitable. But in terms of the grant awards of what community leaders are getting, each community leaders are getting for a grant award, it really isn't being applied in that same exact way in this process this year, if that makes sense. Did I leave anything out, Julian?
No, I mean, certainly we're going to read all the responses and it'll form the overall process. Yeah, but in terms, we're designing a non-competitive process where all of those organizations that we funded in the past that are BIPOC-led are going to get funding. You know, again, don't want to put them through a process, and especially as we're transitioning grants for change. So this year is a little bit of an anomaly in that respect. And then we're going to invite the community to think about what does participatory grant making look like for a movement-led fund, you know. And so we're excited to then take your responses to that community group that is able and willing to have those conversations over the first half of 2022. Your responses will inform that process, I would say, more than, well, yeah, than the awards this fall, if that makes sense.
I have another question from the chat. Someone is asking if there's one reflection form per organizational or community leader infographic or one pager, or is there one reflection form total for all the one pagers as a packet?
Julian, do you want to go over that? I think that was, you went over earlier, so.
Oh, yeah, I can be brief though, and I'm so cognizant of just speaking a lot. It's awkward to talk so much in a room with also such amazing people. So I will be very brief with this one. Yeah, one reflection form at the end of each packet. So packet number 1 will have a link to a reflection form. Packet number 2, reflection form. Packet number 3, reflection form, and then response form for the whole at the end. And that reflection at the end of each packet will be about all of the organizations in that single packet.
I just wanted to give people that visual again. I think it was this one, right? Awesome. Okay.
For time.
Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, Jonah, I also want to maybe just give also some space for if people have, questions too. But Joanna, do you have anything that's?
There is one more question in the chat.
Yeah.
I know it's one that we don't have an answer for, so I'm going to get back to you, James, and make sure that we get that answer for you.
Or James, just text me later and I'll give you an answer.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
mean, it may be informative for everybody, I know.
Can I just say what the question was? May I just
Yeah.
say it out? I want to know if you knew how many BIPOC nonprofits there are in Maine. And if so, how many are benefiting from your process right now? Your percentage?
I knew you would ask a tough question. I knew it. I knew it. How many in Maine total? Don't know. Don't know. In our process, though, we're anticipating between 27 and 35 is our initial. I know it's broad, but again, people are self-defining based on that criteria. So we're anticipating between 27 and 35 that have been funded through Grants for Change from 2016 to 2020. But over the whole state, not sure. But you might know better than I would, probably.
No, I was just wondering, coming with Apollo's question or about new BIPOC organizations not being available to apply. How many new ones probably popped up in the past year?
It's a great question. Yeah. And what I hope is that our process after we're through this grant cycle 2022, where we invite all those organizations, that would be the time to sort of gather BIPOC organizations that are new into that process.
Thank you.
I think that's all we have for time right now.
I saw somebody waving. Yeah.
Kathy, I have a question. Oh,
Yeah, please.
Kathy, who?
Kathy,
Oh, thank you. How accessible are you for further questions after this when we receive our packets? I know I will need some guidance, not how to compose my reflections, but to understand the process a little bit more. Will you be accessible, or who will be accessible?
yes, please shoot us an email, and we'll provide that at the end. That email, we can also put it in the chat for y'all. But please email us, and we can set up a time to connect as well, so we can walk people through the process or answer any questions, as well as we are sending everybody the recording, so you can always replay that recording and pause it and at your own pace and rewatch as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions that come up.
Great.
As a note before we move on, there are a couple other questions in the chat, and I do see them, just so everyone knows we are seeing your questions. All of the questions that have come in, we're going to make sure that we get answers up with this recording as well, not just in the recording, but in text on our website and shared out to the entire group of participants.
I'm wondering, Joanna, Desiree, how you feel about this. Instead of doing the last breakout group, we've got maybe 10 more minutes. How are folks feeling about answering a few more questions?
Good.
Is that okay while it's fresh? As long as everybody here commits to finding community around this work, or maybe we can have more opportunities to connect. But yeah, a few more. Desiree, Joanna, you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. Somebody have another question?
I have another one in the chat,
Okay.
which is asking if the reflections are intended to be helpful to the organization or to the process of Grants for Change this year.
The
Could you repeat?
Yes. Are the reflections intended to be helpful to the organization or to the process of grant making?
Desiree, can I?
Yeah.
Briefly, I would say the primary intention of the responses and reflections are for you, honestly. Is for you to have a moment to sit with the work that's being done, to reflect on your role, your positionality, your responsibility, to think about your values, of why you're committed to this, and to maybe, to engage, to find opportunities to engage with the work that's being done So primarily that, I think the responses and the reflections honestly are for opportunities for you. Again, hoping to respect that you all are immersed and there's information there about the works that's going on and the importance of racial justice work, you know, and in its various forms. So we see these responses as an opportunity, an invitation, maybe a challenge, you know, to get involved, maybe to donate directly to the organization, you know, maybe to show up or sign up for their newsletter, or right, to volunteer, but to engage. I would say that's the primary purpose. We're hoping, at least, for the responses. Was that Desiree?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. You hit it on the nail. Does anyone else have any questions? We really want the rest of the time to be for y'all.
I do have another one from the chat. What's the process for participants connecting with community leaders? Will they need to wait until after November 30th?
Connecting, I guess it would be great to be able to define connecting.
And Michelle, feel free to jump in if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, as far as engaging with them, like to volunteer or to provide if they ask for something and we can provide something to them, do we communicate that to main initiatives and go through you guys, or do we just contact them directly? Is there some sort of process that we need to go through to make sure like they're not getting inundated and there's no way to figure out like who's like, do they need the support? Do they need to ask anymore? Maybe they just got it.
That's a really good question. Really appreciate that.
That's a great question. Yeah, we really want you know, this process to be empowering and granting more autonomy that is rightfully to community leaders. So, you know, if you click on a one-pager infographic and it says learn more about, you know, the community leaders, you click on the website, you see they're asking for volunteers, or maybe the one-pager says they want people to, you know, show up to rallies or to, you know, write letters to their local representatives, you know, feel free to do that. So you don't have to wait until the end of the process to do that as well.
Yeah. And no, too, I mean, you know, we're trying to connect with community leaders, and a lot of people are really stretched, right? So if you reach out and you don't hear back, you know, I mean, understand that, you know, folks are maybe at capacity, but, you know, maybe try again at another time. And, you know, if there's a direct or specific thing too, yeah, we would be happy to help try to connect, you know. But no, I appreciate that, right? Because we don't want to inundate, you know, but the hope is too, if the ask, if it's a response to a direct ask too, that there, you know, there would be, yeah, some capacity around that to receiving that.
I think the other thing too that I'm curious about is the data around that, because it would be really interesting to say, since you're building this kind of decentering process and participatory grant making, that you actually had some data saying that, you know, the relationship between your grantees and your readers or your community leaders and your participants, that they got this benefit and this many participants actually volunteered or, you know, completed this ask. So I just didn't know if there was a way of you collecting that data so you could really showcase it. Cause I think that's a very unique and supportive process that I think a lot of people are going to be moving, like other organizations that offer grants might look at this one and say, wow, look at the outcome from this. So you're actually becoming a change agent for other grant making agencies. So I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you. We hope, we hope that we're all a part of that kind of change. So thank
Yeah.
you.
And the final response form is going to have a question of what was your response to the ask. So that will be included, but it may not be as elaborate of a, collecting data, but it will be a little bit of data. But more for, this participant process is for participants too, like Julian said.
Yeah.